Recently, I discussed the matchup of Kakashi versus Heavy Sasuke and who could truly win that fight, and many fans typically pairing these two specifically up against one another, but the set of variations that's not so discussed is Renegon Sasuke or Primal Valley Sasuke versus DMS Kakashi. Their two strongest forms, at least in Shippuden, and this match is actually one of the best discussions in the Naruto franchise. So let's break the matchup down and who would most likely win. Subscribe, shooting for 20k, let's go. Now, this debate is actually quite complicated and really comes down to the assertions upheld by the Kakashi perspective and how you want to relate them back to Sasuke. So firstly, I want to assert that the two characters should be, in every metric of the term, within the same tier of fighter, as it's not like Kakashi is perception blitzing Kaguya, but is rather that he is performing feats on a chakra amped variation of Kaguya that Naruto and his clones also can't really do. Now, Kakashi's first real display is snatching up Sakura out forth from Kaguya's super fast chakra hands, which were previously able to deal with Naruto's clones, although Sasuke too scales above said clones, fitting with how Naruto thought Sasuke could save Sakura with his ocular powers. And while you may immediately assume that he's referring to the Immunotasia Kara, he then says, "Yes, Sasuke," as if to say that Sasuke was the one doing it whenever he saw Kakashi Susanoo. So it could just mean that there's multiple different ocular abilities that Sasuke could have used to save Sakura rather than just the Immunotasia Kara. We know that Sasuke scales above any of these clones and anything performed by a non-Avatar 6-Pass Naruto, as the two had previously acclimated to equality and then each got half of an unquantifiable amount of 6-Pass chakra, yet Sasuke has another form of the Susanoo beyond that which he previously matched Naruto's avatar, and any constructs are generally above the user's base, such as when Naruto relies on his chakra arms against White Mask Obito, or to match Itachi Susanoo and whatnot. So just by nature, Sasuke should scale above these forms of Naruto and his physical feats, even if he couldn't perform them on his own without the Susanoo. So this is also more consistent with the fact that Sasuke is able to save Naruto, reacting to Kaguya's Senbon, which also in most cases are faster than the user, like how it's Jiraiya's fastest Sage Mode attack or Sasuke's fastest Chidori variant through his Susanoo hand. It's also crucial to note that this Kaguya, whom he reacts to, is most likely the strongest version of Kaguya throughout this whole fight, at least depending on your interpretation of a later point. Sasuke then in his perfect Susanoo gets blasted back due to Kaguya enhancing herself with the Vacuum Fist chakra, which she later does, but actually has to use 4 Vacuum Fists to break Sasuke's Susanoo, which could also be a testament to two things: Kaguya's looming fatigue and Sasuke's evolution, as we know that he was training and practicing techniques trying to escape the desert dimension, stating that nothing seems to work while drenched in sweat, implying that he's trying methods to escape, sort of just throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. You could also point to Kakashi being able to Kamui away one of the ash bones. However, these bones aren't really exceedingly fast, especially when accounting for distance, as we know that Kaguya could beat up Naruto and use these to kill his clones, somewhat with the same strategy. However, when she was really trying to kill Naruto, she was charging forward with them in her hand, sometimes even grabbing Naruto with her hair as well to restrain him to then stab him. So it's much better like that, and they're not like a super fast projectile in relation to Kaguya. I mean, the gravity planet is noted to affect the aim of the bones, but Kaguya is confident if she just readjusts the aim that it could hit Naruto and Sasuke, but they could react previously. And regardless, Kakashi's Kamui probably wouldn't be able to hit Sasuke, as we know that the Immunotasia Kara can react in even tighter time frames, like when Naruto is much closer and he instantly swaps over there, so the Kamui likely wouldn't be able to one-shot kill Sasuke or anything like that. Now, Kakashi's potential best aspect going into this battle is actually his bodily Kamui, which he notes is Obito's directly, meaning that it also acts as a new normative state in comparison to a state that's tangible, which also does make it seem that Kakashi can't really be counted as reacting to the Ash Bone Jutsu, which Sasuke can do in the gravity dimension. Now, yes, there is heavy gravity as we mentioned, but this is only noted to be an aim problem, not really a speed problem as we mentioned prior, which Kaguya herself, as I mentioned, notes. And if they are slower, we know that Sasuke's Susanoo should certainly be faster than him, and so if anything, we have a potentially slower, though not significant if so, Ash Bone reaction from a base Sasuke, who can then amplify himself with the Susanoo to a blitz level versus a Kakashi who's already in the Susanoo. Furthermore, we know that this Kakashi, who then goes to use a 6-Paz Raikiri to cut Kaguya, is still being propelled via the initial force of the Susanoo flying downward, also perhaps enhancing the speed to an unknown degree. So perhaps if the two were on the ground, Kakashi would likely be much slower just due to the extra propulsion, or at least there isn't a way to ground this assertion back in favor of a non-Susanoo Kakashi, which is ultimately unfortunate as he doesn't really have any other feat outside of it, or outside of the Susanoo really at all, other than that extremely enhanced propulsion feat, which could just be attributed to the Susanoo. And while it is still also really impressive that he's able to hit Kaguya from a potentially large distance, the reason why I posit potentially even in that is due to the fact that Kakashi is still flying at Kaguya through most of the entire sequence. So we have no idea that the distance between he and Kaguya when he actually does dive out at her. So it's kind of unquantifiable, at least in distinguishing whether this is his raw speed from a distance or his Susanoo speed. Either way, it could still be attributed to Kakashi as a whole, but it's not fair to say that it's attributed to his base level and then the Susanoo can then enhance that speed much further beyond that. So a lot of Kakashi's stock is very contingent on your interpretations of other factors and the charity which you give him, as we hinted prior. However, all of his feats still count, insofar as they can still be Kakashi's feats in a general sense. And a better way to argue for this, Kakashi, is to actually appeal to his birthday column, which are written by Carabelle Mama, who helped write other pieces of canon material and are published by Shueisha, the basically owners of Naruto, wherein their columns actually state that, quote, able to manifest his own perfect Susanoo, Kakashi overwhelms Kaguya. And just prior in these columns, it states that Naruto is fighting toe-to-toe with this very Kaguya, meaning that Kakashi naturally can scale to a Kaguya that's likely relative to or above the one that was relative to all of Naruto's clones. And this really comes down to one statement. This one, which is from Zetsu, who states that Kaguya, at least in the Viz official translation, is now exponentially greater than she was before. However, the direct translation indicates less of an exponential mathematical increase, but rather that Kaguya's speed and might is now on a completely different level. Although, in fairness, I still have problems with either preferred translation, as we don't get the point that the initial half of the comparison is being derived from. Is it claiming that she's on a different level from her rabbit goddess form, fatigued base form prior to that, or perhaps her full power form at the beginning of the battle? Each of these would all lend credence to a totally different conclusion in terms of how powerful Kakashi is. Like, literally tiers of difference. For example, if you run with the Viz and assume the best, being that it's in reference to her initial full power state, if so, then Kakashi could literally blitz around hard. Like, blitz around and just convoy Sasuke, game over, fight done. Kakashi absolutely stomps. Although, in all fairness, here's why I probably neither subscribe to that interpretation, nor do I think it really matters all too much, as it's that right after that, we see that Sasuke and Naruto can still fight and react to this Kaguya on a similar manner in which they did prior. And we see that Naruto can react via clone swapping when he gets hit, which Kakashi can also do in the same time frame via then comboing the rod to save Naruto and Sasuke in virtually that exact same time frame. Sasuke can then use Emanote Chikara and activate the seal in the same time of Naruto, so at least if she's much stronger now or not, then it's not a deciding factor between these combatants, as they can still react to this Kaguya and each other in a very similar time frame. So I think the safest interpretation to go with is that Sasuke and Kakashi should be physically relative, with both being able to activate their ocular derived abilities in a very similar time frame. Although Sasuke's Susanoo should give him more of a guaranteed edge as opposed to Kakashi's, whose physical stats are less distinct from those stats, so just keep in mind that Sasuke and Kakashi can both fight each other in their base stats, presuming that Kakashi is proportionally similar to his Susanoo speed relative to how other users are, with Sasuke having the edge in terms of reaction and combat speed. The two would also be relative in their Susanoo stats, with Sasuke having that same edge. However, to Kakashi's benefit, we know that he harnesses the Kamui Shuriken, a projectile faster than his Susanoo, more than Sasuke harnesses the Susanoo arrows, at least in their full states. So Kakashi does have that advantage and could have an advantage in their first long-range interaction. And I actually think that we have a good idea of how Sasuke would respond to this, as we know that he will test higher abilities or higher tier abilities by observing how they interact with his arrows, just like what he did to Naruto's TSOs in the Final Valley, which also have a lot of showings that really confirm that Sasuke has the superior edge, as even if we know that Kakashi is above the Naruto clones that jumped Kaguya, Sasuke's Bijuu Amp Susanoo is fighting off multiple Kurama Avatar clones simultaneously, which fits with how naturally his Susanoo was only matched by the higher form of the Avatar, as opposed to these, which would already naturally scale above all of his feats on Kaguya, which gives us the idea that Sasuke having superior showings physically without the Susanoo. We also know that Kakashi's Susanoo is said to be even cooler than Sasuke, but Naruto is kind of just glazing up Kakashi, and I mean that in an actual way. Naruto literally hasn't seen the Susanoo do anything but grab Sakura from the rabbit hands. It hasn't damaged Kaguya, hasn't even shown the shuriken, nothing, and we know that Naruto goes on to glaze Kakashi's nickname, so I mean Naruto isn't really making an empirical claim, but rather a complimentary remark here. Now, since we are going to talk about Sasuke at his peak, we have to give him the 9 Bijuu enhanced Indra Susanoo that displayed chakra control rivaling that of Prime Hagoromo, fitting with how Sasuke is quite confident in reincarnating like how Indra once did when Zetsu stoked the embers of hatred all those years ago. So, with this variation of the Susanoo, it should be just above Kakashi's Susanoo. And since we aren't really sure how powerful Kakashi is in his base physical stats, Sasuke should have an edge physically and is much more diverse in terms of the jutsu he's willing to utilize, like tossing out fireballs to cover forward pressure while he teleports behind to a surprise attack and then, get the opponent. And the Eminote Jakara seems to have less of a process time from the activation, which is just me saying that the Kamui takes a portion of time to actually pull whatever in after the activation point, and the Eminote Jakara seems to be more of a literal swap upon activation. So even if Kakashi were to turn around and try to suck Sasuke in like how Obito tries to do against Minato, Sasuke should just be able to teleport out to a larger distance and mount a V3 Susanoo to fire out crossbow attacks, just like what he did to Naruto in the Final Valley. And we've actually seen that these proportionally are a problem for Kakashi, as we know that the weaker Sasuke at the end of the summit was relative to Kakashi, with some arguing that perhaps Kakashi even had the advantage. We still know that these arrows were a Kamui needed level. They were much above Kakashi's base stats. So, I mean, since I've presupposed relativity here, it's just going to be a similar story. Now, with that being said, there isn't really anything to suggest that Kakashi can't just Kamui away all of the arrows, as he kind of can, since there isn't really a stamina cap, but rather a time cap on how long Obito's chakra can remain in the real world. Perhaps Kakashi can up the Susanoo and toss out multiple shuriken, but regardless, Sasuke can then up his own form into the Indra Susanoo like he does to Naruto, slowly upping his form to then test his opponent. And if he goes on to those higher forms, I could possibly see a case for Kakashi, Kamui shuriken being overwhelming, but overall I would give it to Sasuke. Now, if they were to drop these forms down and fight in a more taijutsu focused setting, in terms of raw hand-to-hand, even if we argue that the two are equal, Sasuke's taijutsu, like Naruto's, is basically unmatched at this level in the series. Not just in terms of physical stats, but and how they actually, against like Naruto, he's tossing out kicks, jabs, elbows, knees, all within the same sequence, on top of monitoring the chakra in Naruto's body to then absorb it whenever he notices an influx of power. Kakashi's best performance of taijutsu is probably the Obito fight. I mean, the anime has this dude always putting up banger matches in hand-to-hand, but in the manga, the Obito fight is pretty solid, both tossing out a strike and guarding one another, and unironically, we see how Kakashi might respond to a point-blank fireball running around to the side, and if he does that against Sasuke, he would have to do a full momentum swap due to the Eminote Jakara tactic, but the reason why I don't think this is how he would respond is just due to he has Kamui and would probably just pass through it like he does with the bones. So he'd probably just rely on that instead of the evasion tactic. And then it just kind of becomes Sasuke is probably greater in terms of combat speed, power, and versatility, but Kakashi has an ability that allows for him to level that playing field in Kamui. So, for example, when Naruto begins utilizing chakra arms or Kurama constructive abilities, Obito can still keep up with Kamui and still place himself in a good position, where I could see Kakashi then potentially risking, using some 6-Paz Raikiri or a Kamui Raikiri like Obito had Kamui infused fire style in the Bomb Blast Dance to then try and actually hit Sasuke, but Sasuke, in all fairness, also does have a 6-Paz Chidori, but can add Enton to it. So all in all, I think the fight is really interesting and has always been a question that I get asked, where the answer for me is just saying, if you subscribe to the high ends of Kaguya's exponential power statement, then Kakashi literally dominates. And if not, then Sasuke should win pretty handily. So you can take either interpretation, but I would personally take Sasuke, giving him the win like 6, maybe 7 out of 10 times. But I ultimately just wanted to shed some light on this topic and teach you guys how to better articulate why each character would win. With that being said, subscribe if you learned something, and more importantly, may God bless you all. Love you guys.